Brick by brick, this mansion was built to keep the living out and the dead in. Within its walls, secrets breathe and shadows speak. Welcome to Haunted Mansion Stories. Every mansion has secrets. This one whispers them in the dark. Listen to the secrets only if you dare.
The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the quiet streets of Maplewood. I was just finishing up my day at the high school, my mind swirling with thoughts of lesson plans and the upcoming science fair. As I walked home, the familiar sounds of the town faded into an eerie silence. That's when I heard it, a piercing scream that shattered the calm. I froze, my heart racing. The scream was followed by a loud crash, and instinctively, I turned toward the sound. A figure staggered into view, its clothes tattered and its skin a sickly gray. My stomach twisted as I recognized the unmistakable shuffle of a zombie. Panic surged through me, and I turned on my heel, sprinting down the street. The chaos erupted around me. More figures emerged from the shadows, their moans echoing through the air, a haunting chorus of despair. I ducked into a small convenience store, slamming the door behind me and locking it with trembling hands. Inside, a few other terrified souls huddled in the dim light, their faces pale and wide-eyed. "Did you see that?" a woman gasped, her voice shaking. "What is happening?" I shook my head, unable to form words. The radio in the corner crackled to life, a frantic voice urging everyone to stay indoors, to avoid confrontation. But as I glanced around, I knew we couldn't stay here forever. The zombies would find us eventually. "We need to get to the old community center," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's fortified and has supplies. We can't just wait to be found." A man named Tom, who looked like he'd just stepped out of a horror movie with his disheveled hair and wild eyes, nodded in agreement. "I'm with you. Let's move." We crept through the back of the store, the groans of the undead growing louder outside. My heart pounded in my chest as we slipped out into the chaos. The streets were a nightmare, cars were overturned, and flames flickered in the distance, casting an orange glow over the scene. "Go!" I shouted, leading the way. We sprinted down the street, the sound of shuffling feet behind us growing closer. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, pushing me forward. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from a nearby alley, and a group of zombies stumbled into view, drawn by the noise. "Run!" I yelled, urging everyone to pick up the pace. We dashed toward the community center, but as we rounded a corner, I heard a cry behind me. It was Lisa, one of the other survivors, who had tripped and fallen. My heart sank as I turned back, but I knew I couldn't risk the others. "Keep going," I shouted, forcing myself to look away. The door to the community center loomed ahead, a beacon of hope. I pushed through, slamming it shut just as the first zombie reached the steps. We were safe, for now. But as we caught our breath, the reality of our situation settled in. The world outside was unraveling, and we were trapped in a nightmare of our own making. I glanced around at the faces of my companions, fear, desperation, and a flicker of hope mingled in their eyes. We were alive, but for how long? As the sounds of the undead echoed outside, I knew we had to prepare. We had to fight back, not just for ourselves, but for the future of Maplewood. And in that moment, I felt a surge of determination. We would survive this nightmare together. The heavy door groaned as it locked into place, and for a long moment, silence filled the community center. Our breathing was ragged, echoing against the wide, empty hall. Dust hung in the air, catching in the dim light from the overhead fixtures that flickered weakly, as though the building itself feared the dark outside. Tom leaned against the wall, running a shaky hand through his hair. "That was too damn close," he muttered, his eyes darting to the boarded windows. Lisa's absence pressed on all of us like a stone. No one spoke her name, but her scream still rang in my ears, a reminder of the impossible choices we'd already been forced to make. A small group had gathered near the center of the room, 5 of us now, strangers bound together by terror. I took a slow breath, forcing the tremor out of my voice. We need to secure this place. Barricade the doors, check the windows, make sure we're not sitting ducks. A woman in her 30s, the one who had first spoken in the store, crossed her arms. Her face was pale, her hair pulled back in a loose bun. And what then? Wait here until they break in? Until we starve? Her words cut through the fragile calm, and unease rippled through the group. Tom bristled. Better than running blind through the streets. You saw what's out there. We wouldn't last an hour. I stepped between them, holding up a hand. Arguing won't help. We need to think long-term. The community center was built to withstand storms, it's fortified. We've got a chance here. In the far corner, an old radio sat atop a table, its dial glowing faintly. The static hissed, then broke with a fractured voice. If you can hear this, safe zones are being established. Proceed to. The message cut out, swallowed by static. Every head turned. Hope flickered, fragile as a match. The woman with the bun narrowed her eyes at me. Safe zones. If there are places still holding out, we should be moving toward them, not hiding here. Before I could respond, a loud thud shook the door. Everyone froze. Another thud followed, and then the moan, low, guttural, hungry. The dead had found us. Board the windows, I shouted, grabbing a chair and dragging it against the entrance. Tom and I pressed our weight against the door as the others scrambled for anything they could use, tables, chairs, broken shelves. The pounding grew louder, each strike rattling the frame. My muscles screamed as I braced the door, sweat dripping into my eyes. They won't stop, Tom gasped, his voice strained. They never stop. No, I said through clenched teeth, my heart hammering. But neither do we. The pounding at the door finally subsided, but the silence that followed was worse. Every creak of the old building sounded like a threat. We'd managed to wedge enough tables and chairs against the entrance to buy us time, but none of us believed it would last forever. The group huddled together in the main hall, the dim emergency lights flickering overhead. Shadows stretched long across the cracked linoleum floor, each one twitching like it might spring to life. Tom sat with his back to the wall, his chest heaving, eyes fixed on the door as though sheer willpower might keep it shut. Across from him, the woman with the bun, who finally introduced herself as Rachel, paced in slow, restless strides. Then there was Marcus, a quiet teenager no older than 17, who had clutched a baseball bat since we left the store. He hadn't spoken a word since we got here, but his eyes darted from person to person, wide and watchful. Finally, Harold, an older man with a limp, leaned heavily on a cane. His lined face was grim, his breathing shallow. He hadn't volunteered much, but when he finally spoke, it was in a voice heavy with authority. This place won't hold. His words dropped like stones. You can pile furniture against doors all you want, but those things will keep coming until something gives. We need a plan. A real plan. Rachel turned sharply to him. Exactly what I've been saying. We should move, head toward that safe zone we heard on the radio. Tom shook his head, frustration spilling into his tone. And what if that broadcast was days old? What if it's already gone? You saw how fast this spread. We go wandering, we're finished. Staying here is a death sentence. Rachel snapped back, her voice rising. The air thickened with tension. Marcus tightened his grip on the bat, his knuckles white. My stomach churned as I realized what was happening. The zombies weren't the only threat anymore. Fear was eating us alive, tearing at the edges of reason. I stepped forward, raising my hands. Enough. We're all scared. We all lost people tonight. But tearing each other apart isn't going to save us. If we can make it through the night, we'll regroup in the morning. Assess supplies, figure out our next move. The group quieted, though Rachel's glare lingered on me like a knife. The silence stretched again, broken only by the faint groans outside, muffled by walls that felt thinner with each passing second. I lowered myself to the floor, exhaustion pressing into my bones. As the night wore on, one by one, the others drifted into uneasy sleep. I stayed awake, listening to the hollow thuds and dragging footsteps outside, my heart pounding at every sound. And then, just as my eyelids began to grow heavy, I heard a noise from inside the building. A faint shuffle. A soft creak of floorboards. Someone or something was moving in the dark. The sound was subtle at first, a creak in the rafters, a shuffle too soft to be the storm outside. My breath caught, and I sat perfectly still, straining to listen. The others lay scattered across the floor in uneasy sleep, their faces pale in the dim emergency lights. Another noise followed. Closer this time. I rose slowly, careful not to wake the others, and tightened my grip on a broken chair leg I'd been keeping close. My heart thudded in my chest as I followed the sound down the hall that branched off the main hall. The corridor was dark, the overhead lights long dead. I could barely see, but I could hear the uneven scrape of movement, the sound of weight shifting across old wooden floors. "Hello." My whisper trembled more than I wanted. No response. I edged forward, each step echoing far louder than it should have. The door at the end of the hall was cracked open, a thin sliver of black beyond. I nudged it wider with the chair leg, the hinges groaning in protest. The smell hit me first, damp, musty, with a sour undertone that curled my stomach. Then a figure moved. I stumbled back, nearly crying out. The beam of my flashlight, flickering, weak, fell across the shape of a man slumped in the corner. His skin was pale, sweat-slicked, and his eyes rolled toward me with sluggish effort. "Don't." His voice was cracked, broken. "Don't tell them." I froze. He wasn't one of us. He must have been here before we arrived, hiding in the community center all along. His sleeve slipped back, and my stomach turned cold. A jagged bite wound marred his forearm, angry and swollen, oozing dark fluid. He saw my eyes fall on it, and he shook his head violently. "I'm fine," he rasped. "It's nothing. Please, don't tell them. They'll kill me." My throat tightened. The rules were clear even before the broadcasts cut out. Everyone knew, a bite meant death. But here he was, begging in the half-dark, still human, for now. Behind me, I heard the creak of footsteps. Tom's voice, low and sharp. "What's going on?" I turned, and his eyes followed mine to the slumped figure in the corner. Tom's jaw clenched, his knuckles tightening around the length of pipe he carried. The bitten man shrank back, desperation in his eyes. "Please. I won't hurt anyone. Don't tell the others. Please." Tom glanced at me, his face a mask of hard resolve. "We can't let this slide. You know what happens. We deal with it now." My stomach twisted. The groans outside pressed against the walls, but in that hallway, the real nightmare was choosing who we were willing to become in order to survive. Tom's grip tightened on the pipe, his face hard as stone. "You know what he is," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the faint groans outside. "We end it now, before he turns. Before he kills us in our sleep." The bitten man shrank further into the corner, clutching his arm as though he could hide the wound from sight. His eyes were wild, darting between us like a trapped animal. "I'm not one of them. I can fight it. Just give me time, please." Something about his desperation made me hesitate. He still sounded human, still clung to hope like the rest of us. But the wound, it was angry and raw, already crawling with black veins. "Tom," I said slowly, lowering my chair leg, "killing him won't make us safer, it'll tear us apart. If we start executing survivors. Rachel's voice cut through the dark, sharp and cold. She had followed us down the hall, her arms crossed, her eyes gleaming with grim satisfaction. No. Tom's right. He's a liability. The rules exist for a reason. One bite, and it's over. From the main room, Marcus stirred awake. His footsteps padded closer until he appeared, baseball bat in hand, eyes wide. What's happening? Nothing you need to worry about, kid, Tom snapped, but Marcus wasn't fooled. His gaze fell on the man in the corner, and his face drained of color. The older survivor, Harold, limped in last, his cane tapping against the floor. He surveyed the scene with a weary sigh. So, the world hasn't even been dead a day, and already we're arguing about who deserves to live. Rachel scowled. This isn't about deserve. It's survival. We can't risk him turning inside these walls. The bitten man's voice broke, cracking like dry wood. I was here before you. This was my hiding place. You think you can just walk in and decide whether I live or die? You don't get to play God. The hallway filled with silence so heavy it pressed on my chest. The truth was, none of us had the answers. We were just clinging to the illusion of control in a world that had spun into chaos overnight. I met Tom's eyes, then Rachel's, then the bitten man's. My voice felt foreign as it left my throat. We vote. Everyone gets a say. We live or die as a group. Rachel's lip curled, but she didn't argue. Tom's shoulders tensed, but he gave a short nod. Marcus looked sick, while Harold simply muttered, "Democracy at the end of the world." Fitting. The bitten man exhaled, shaking, tears glinting in his eyes. For a moment, hope returned to his face. But as I looked at my companions, I knew this vote wasn't about fairness. It was about fear. And fear had already started to rot us from the inside. We gathered in the main hall, the weak emergency lights casting our shadows long and skeletal across the walls. The bitten man sat slumped against a pillar, cradling his arm, his breath shallow and uneven. The wound pulsed with a sickly heat, but he hadn't turned, not yet. Tom stood like a sentry near him, pipe in hand, his jaw clenched. Rachel hovered on the opposite side, arms folded, her expression sharp with judgment. Harold lowered himself into a chair, his cane balanced across his lap, while Marcus leaned against the far wall, avoiding everyone's eyes. I swallowed hard. We said we'd vote. No arguments, no fighting. Whatever we decide, we live with it together. The man looked at me, his lips trembling, gratitude and fear tangled in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "Tom was the first. Kill him. Now. He's already dead, whether he knows it or not." Rachel nodded immediately. Same. My stomach twisted, but I forced the words out. Keep him alive, for now. Isolate him, watch him. Until we know. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, then spoke for the first time that night. His voice was barely above a whisper. I don't want to kill him. Not unless we have to." All eyes turned to Harold. The old man exhaled slowly, rubbing his temple. "I've buried more friends than I can count. I won't send another man to his grave before he stops breathing. My vote's with the kid." The room went quiet. 3-2. The bitten man lived. Tom cursed under his breath, slamming the pipe against the floor with a hollow clang. "You're all making a mistake. When he turns, and you'll regret it." Rachel's glare could have cut glass. "And when he does, I hope you're the first one he gets to." The bitten man sagged with relief, though the tremor in his hands betrayed his fear. "Thank you. Thank you all. I swear, I won't let you down." But as I looked at Tom and Rachel, their eyes burning with fury and betrayal, I realized what had just happened. The vote hadn't saved us. It had divided us. Outside, The groans of the dead swelled louder, as if echoing our fracture. And inside, I felt the fragile thread of unity snap. We were 6 souls trapped together in the dark, but already the seeds of distrust had taken root. The question wasn't if the bitten man would turn. It was whether we'd destroy each other first. The night dragged on, heavy and suffocating. No one slept. We sat in uneasy silence, each lost in our thoughts, the moans outside gnawing at the edges of our nerves. Every so often, the bitten man coughed, a wet, rattling sound that made Tom's knuckles whiten around his pipe. I'd convinced the group to move him into a storage room off the main hall, locking the door from the outside. He hadn't resisted, though I saw the despair in his eyes when the latch slid shut. His voice carried faintly through the door. "Please, don't leave me here." Rachel muttered, "We should have put him out of his misery," and turned her back. Hours blurred together. The emergency lights buzzed, flickering in and out, casting the hall in brief pockets of shadow. Marcus sat curled in a corner, clutching his bat like a lifeline. Harold rubbed at his leg, wincing, his face pale with pain. Then a crash. The sound jolted everyone upright. It wasn't from the storage room. It came from the front entrance. Tom rushed to the barricade, pressing his ear to the door. The pounding followed, harder than before. Heavy. Coordinated. Not just the sluggish battering of the dead, but a forceful strike that rattled the frame. "Something's out there," Tom hissed. "Something big." The moans grew louder, more desperate, like a horde had gathered. The barricade shuddered under another impact, a chair leg snapping loose. Rachel grabbed my arm, her eyes wide. "We can't hold them off. We need to run. Now." "Run where?" I shot back. "The streets are crawling. We'd be slaughtered." Before she could respond, a muffled thud came from the storage room. A groan. A long, guttural moan. My blood turned cold. The bitten man. Tom's voice broke through the noise, raw with fury. "I told you." His turning. Another crash from the door, louder, closer to breaking. Another groan from inside the storage room, more guttural this time. We were surrounded by the dead outside, and by something changing within. Marcus's voice trembled from the corner. "What do we do? What do we do?" I had no answer. Only the suffocating truth. There was no safe place left. The barricade splintered. The storage room door rattled. And Maplewood's nightmare came crashing in. The first chair slid loose from the barricade and toppled to the floor with a crash. The sound was deafening in the silence that followed. Then the door groaned, splintering inward. Tom braced his shoulder against it, shouting, "Hold it. Just hold it." Rachel rushed to help, her hands shaking as she shoved a broken shelf against the frame. But the pounding only grew stronger, louder, like 100 fists hammering in unison. The wood cracked. Dust rained from the ceiling. Then came the scream. From the storage room. The bitten man's voice ripped through the hall, raw and animal. His fists pounded the locked door, harder and harder, until the hinges groaned. The sound of his moans twisted, deepened, no longer human. Marcus stumbled backward, his face pale. His changing. Oh God, his. The storage door burst open. The man lurched into the hall, his eyes clouded, his jaw snapping with a sickening crack. Rachel screamed. Tom spun, pipe raised, but the creature was fast, faster than we'd imagined. It lunged, sinking its teeth into Tom's arm before I could blink. No. I swung the chair leg with everything I had, the wood connecting with the thing's skull. It staggered, snarling, before Harold drove his cane hard into its chest, sending it sprawling. Tom fell back, clutching his arm, blood pouring between his fingers. His eyes were wide, not with pain, but with realization. I'm done. The barricade gave one last shudder, then collapsed. The door flew open. Shadows spilled into the hall, groaning, shambling figures pouring through, their faces twisted in hunger. "Run!" I screamed. We scattered. Marcus bolted down the hall, bat in hand. Rachel grabbed Harold's arm, dragging him toward the stairwell. Tom, bleeding and pale, staggered after me as I pulled him toward the back exit. The groans swelled into a chorus of death. Hands clawed at the broken windows. Feet dragged across the floor. The community center, our fragile sanctuary, was gone, swallowed by the tide. We burst through the rear doors into the night air, the flames of burning cars casting the streets in a hellish glow. The world outside was no safer, but it was freedom. For now. Behind us, the community center collapsed into chaos, screams, snarls, and the sound of wood snapping like brittle bones. I didn't look back. Because I knew this was only the beginning. The night swallowed us whole. Smoke curled up from burning cars, casting shadows that twisted and writhed across the crumbling streets. Sirens wailed in the distance, some broken, some still screaming on a loop as if the city itself was crying out. We ran. There was no plan, no destination, just the primal instinct to keep moving, to stay ahead of the tide of groans closing in behind us. Rachel dragged Harold down a side street, her grip fierce despite his limp. Marcus darted ahead, his bat clutched tight, his small frame weaving between overturned trash cans and shattered glass. Tom staggered at my side, pale and sweating, his wounded arm clutched against his chest. I kept my eyes forward, but his ragged breaths told me what I didn't want to admit: he was already fading. We ducked into an alley, pressing ourselves against the shadows. The moans passed nearby, a swarm of shapes shambling through the main road. For a moment, silence returned, thin, fragile. Rachel rounded on me, her eyes blazing. "This is on you." My heart pounded. "What are you talking about? You voted to keep him alive." She jabbed a trembling finger at Tom, who sagged against the wall, his skin already taking on a grey pallor. "And now look. He's bitten. His dead weight. You doomed us." "Enough," Harold rasped, his cane digging into the ground as he steadied himself. "This isn't the time." Tom coughed, a wet sound that made my stomach twist. His eyes met mine, hollow and pleading. "She's right. Don't let me turn. Not like that other guy." Marcus flinched. "Don't say that." His voice cracked, high and shaky. "We can find medicine. Something. We don't have to." "There's no medicine," Rachel snapped. "There's only reality." The words cut sharper than any blade. The silence stretched, broken only by the distant crackle of fire. I knew what Rachel wanted, what Tom was asking for. But I couldn't move. My hands shook, useless, while the weight of leadership pressed on me like a vice. Tom exhaled, his eyes glassy. "When the time comes, don't hesitate." Before I could answer, a sound rose in the distance. Not moans this time, something sharper. A human voice. A scream. Rachel's head whipped toward the street. "There are others out here." Marcus's eyes widened. "Then we're not alone." But I couldn't shake the chill crawling down my spine. That scream wasn't just desperate, it was warning. And in Maplewood, warnings always came too late. The scream tore through the night again, sharper this time, echoing off the burnt-out husks of buildings. It was close, too close. Rachel didn't wait. She grabbed Marcus's arm and started toward the sound. "If there are survivors, we need them. Numbers mean strength. Or numbers mean more mouths to feed," Harold muttered, his voice low but bitter. Still, he followed, leaning hard on his cane. I hesitated, glancing at Tom. He sagged against the wall, his skin clammy, his breath shallow. The bite on his arm had turned black, the veins spiderwebbing up toward his shoulder. His eyes caught mine, clouded with pain. "Go," he rasped. "Don't waste this chance because of me." I clenched my jaw and slipped under his arm, hauling him forward. "If you're still standing, you're still one of us." He didn't argue. Maybe because he didn't have the strength. We moved down the ruined street, glass crunching beneath our feet, every shadow a potential threat. The scream came again, from a collapsed pharmacy on the corner. Its front windows were shattered, shelves overturned inside. Marcus darted ahead, his bat raised. "Hello." His voice cracked. "Is someone there?" For a moment, silence. Then, a rustling. A figure crawled out from behind the counter. It was a girl, no older than Marcus, her face streaked with dirt and blood. She looked at us with wide, terrified eyes. "Help me," she whispered. They locked me in here." Rachel rushed forward, already reaching for her. But Harold caught her arm. "Wait." His gaze sharpened, his instincts honed by decades of seeing the world at its worst. Why would they lock her in? The girl's eyes filled with tears. "Please. I'm not bitten. I swear." Behind us, Tom collapsed to his knees with a groan. The sound echoed in the broken pharmacy, too loud. Too dangerous. The girl flinched, her gaze snapping to him. Then I saw it, fear, yes, but also, something else. Something calculating. Before I could speak, a noise rose outside. The unmistakable shuffle of feet. The groan of the hungry. Marcus's voice trembled. They followed her scream. Rachel gripped the girl's hand tight, pulling her upright. "We're not leaving her." But as the moans grew louder, spilling into the street, I felt dread knot in my stomach. Maybe she wasn't just another survivor. Maybe she was the bait. I watched them flee through the alley, their shouts and the groans of the dead echoing into the night. The heavy door swung shut behind them, leaving me in the half-light of the ruined pharmacy. The horde pressed closer, but none touched me. Their cloudy eyes slid past, their clawed hands scraping shelves and walls as if I were nothing but smoke. I had learned long ago that the dead knew their own. My name doesn't matter anymore. What matters is survival. And survival demands sacrifice. The people I led here? Just another offering. A distraction to keep the swarm sated long enough for me to slip away, to move to the next safe place before the rot of this world closed in again. I used to fight them. I used to believe people could rebuild